What is up, everyone, and welcome back to 305 Takes. We got a good show ahead for you guys today. We're going to be talking a lot about NFL recaps because we had to talk about this past weekend, and Myles has the perfect explanation for it. It was to the T. He told me about it before we started recording, and so I'm going to let Myles lead it off right now.
So week 8 of the NFL season was basically just quarterback chaos all around the NFL. And we'll start off with probably the most devastating news with Kirk Cousins suffering a torn Achilles tendon. And, shout out to Kirk Cousins because he's still walked off on his own power, just hobbled off on one leg. And Kirk has never missed a start in his 12-year NFL career due to injury. He did miss one start during the COVID season because he had a positive COVID test, but 12 years, never missed a start. And, the Vikings were really battling even with the injury to their star receiver. Justin Jefferson had the impressive win on Monday Night Football against the San Francisco 49ers, went into Lambeau this week, made Jordan Love look terrible once again. And, because when Jordan Jefferson first went down, or Justin Jefferson first went down, we had some questions on should the Vikings just pack it in? Kirk's a free agent at the end of the year. Justin Jefferson needs a new contract extension. This might be a point where they can dip their toes into that first overall pick territory and see if they can get one of these highly regarded quarterbacks in this draft. But, they started battling and Kirk was having a really, really good season. So it was sad, but then this is where it started with this quarterback carousel and the quarterback chaos. Kirk Cousins was replaced by a fifth-round draft pick rookie, Jaren Hall from BYU. Jaren Hall came in and played, and his final stats were 3 of 4, 23 yards, with 16 of those yards coming on one single play. So that is a quarterback situation we're definitely going to have to monitor for the rest of the season. They do have Nick Mullins as their emergency third quarterback, which some of us remember from the quarterback carousel that San Francisco continuously was on a few years ago when Jimmy G was hurt. Then we move over to the Dallas Los Angeles Rams game where Matthew Stafford left this game with a thumb injury where he originally injured it by banging his hand on a Cowboys defender's helmet while following through on a pass, and then re-injured it, catching a 2-point conversion in a game that was not close at all. Matthew Stafford was replaced by a Thursday Night Football legend, Brett Ripien. That's all I need to say about that. With 18 seconds left in the first half of the Jacksonville Jaguars game at the Pittsburgh Steelers, Kenny Pickett, who up until this point, up until basically halftime, was 10 of 16 for 73 yards. He was hit by a Jaguars defensive lineman, suffered a rib injury. He was replaced by Mitchell Trubisky for the last 18 seconds of the half and the entire second half. Mitchell Trubisky came in 15 of 27, 138 yards, 2 interceptions, and a 28.5 QBR. And it's not over. It's not over because this is the one. This is the one where this is where I'm like, okay, sometimes we might actually need relegation in the NFL because I don't understand what this New York Giants versus New York Jets game was. Because Tyrod Taylor suffered a rib injury with 7 minutes and 9 seconds left in the second quarter. He was replaced by a man named Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito came in. And from the 7-minute mark all the way into overtime and the just ridiculous game that this was, what Tommy DeVito was the quarterback. And we had a Tommy DeVito versus Zach Wilson matchup. Tommy DeVito, final stats for this game were 2 of 7. Both completions going to Saquon Barkley for a grand total of -1 yard.
People, let that sink in. This is from
2
the second
completions.
quarter all the way until after the first drive of overtime.
And he had 2 completions. And those 2 completions went to his running back. And they went for a grand total of -1 yard. It's a riddle. It's a riddle. It's a riddle on how that happened.
Question on Jeopardy one day.
Okay, the only thing you could give Tommy DeVito is he did get a rushing touchdown. So shout out to anybody that had a Tommy DeVito anytime touchdown, which obviously does not exist because I've never even heard of this person and I love college football. I can't even tell you where he came from. He just spawned after Tyrod Taylor got that rib injury. And so that's Daniel Jones, who I don't think anybody's a fan of. Then to Tyrod Taylor, then to Tommy DeVito.
So,
That
gosh,
that's
let's just list
insane.
off the quarterback. So the
We
quarterback's
had Kirk
injured with
Cousins
Kirk
get
Cousins.
replaced by fifth round draft pick, Jaron Hall. Matthew Stafford replaced by Brett Ripien. Kenny Pickett, with his grand total of 73 yards in 2 quarters of football, was replaced by Mitchell Trubisky. Tyrod Taylor, already a backup, replaced by his backup, Tommy DeVito. And that doesn't even mention Desmond Ritter being replaced by Heineke. That doesn't even mention how just awful Jordan Love has been this season. And that doesn't even mention Cleveland and Deshaun Watson slash PJ Walker slash
Tennessee
Dorian
Titans,
Thompson
which
Robinson,
you named Malik Willis and Will
Will
Levis.
Levis, and Will Levis re Will Levis revitalizing DeAndre Hopkins, who I completely forgot about. Like he scored that first touchdown. I was like, oh, he
That's
does
right.
play in Tennessee. I had no idea. I completely forgot that was a thing. So I mean, this week 8 of the NFL season was. This is one of those where it was just survive in advance. Like, thankfully, your team got out of there with no injury at quarterback, and you didn't have to see a Brett Ripien or a Jaron Hall or a Tommy DeVito take any snaps for your team. I hope.
Yeah. Or you had Mac Jones playing quarterback, which we could get to right away because Myles is Miami Dolphins. They played the New England Patriots. They came out with the win. And the offense didn't start rolling until, very late in the first quarter. And then the day after that, they kind of moved on. But they were playing against Mac Jones, leading the Patriots. And outside of that, like one touchdown where they got because of the Kyle Duggar pick, how they got him so close. Bro, I need to know, like, for certain, like, Patriots fans, like, I would ask them, are you willing to tank the rest of the year so you could get a high draft pick and maybe get one of these quarterbacks as a Caleb Williams, a Drake
And
May?
just move on from back because the thing that's got to be even more frustrating for Patriots fans is even with how just whatever the offense was in the first half is they played it perfectly going into the end of the second quarter. They had the ball with 4 minutes to go. They were driving down the field and then Mac Jones threw a 20-yard Hail Mary that looked like it was in the air for 2 minutes and Jalen Ramsey was right there to grab his first interception and the Dolphins went from potentially being down by 7 at halftime or 10 at halftime to having the lead. And it was just crazy because the offense hadn't really done anything on the offensive side of the ball. And it wasn't like the Patriots were moving the ball, but they were able to at least sustain drives to begin the game. And then once that interception happened, and then the Dolphins got the ball back to start the second half, it was over. And if I was a Patriots fan, that's the part that would drive me the most insane is that we were actually playing everything perfectly. They scored the first touchdown of the game. They had an opportunity to build on their lead going into halftime. Dolphins get the second half kickoff and they go down on that drive and well that was the drive that they actually got the fumble too. So if
Yep.
the Patriots were able to keep the ball in that situation, who knows what would have happened? And we're probably talking about a whole different ball game then. And it just has to be frustrating because you see what they did against the Bills and none of that was there for this game. And in 2 matchups against Vic Fangio, Mac Jones is 8 of 24 for 128 yards and a touchdown and 2 interceptions on passes over 10 yards in the air.
Yeah, that's awful. That's why I was
8 of 24,
yeah,
33%. And it's okay, it's not even like 20 yards down the field. 10 yards?
yeah. That's why I also say it has to be frustrating for Patriots fans because outside the two tight ends, like the two tight ends they have are good. I do think Mike Gesicki's a very good receiving tight end. Hunter Henry, I actually think overall he's a good tight end. But outside of that, they don't have anyone on the outside that could create separation. Devontae Parker, I don't think he's a bad receiver. I just don't think he's very good. Kendrick Bourne,
And
if he's
Mac
your
Jones tried to get him killed,
Kendrick Bourne, I mean, if he's your third receiver on your team, I actually don't have an issue with that because I think he could actually be a very good slot receiver.
and now he's out for the season, torn ACL.
Yeah, and
So
so
it's like, what do they even have to look forward to? To build on that stat about the 10 yards 10 air yards versus the Dolphins defense this year. The Patriots quarterbacks generated a 31.3 passer rating. That's less than if he spiked the ball into the ground 24 straight times while producing a completion percentage over expectation of negative 4.8%. On
yeah,
deep throws, Jones didn't have a single completion.
yeah. I
0
mean,
for 6.
it's been bad offense for Patriots for the past 2 years, and that's why I would ask Patriots fans like, are you willing to tank, try to get a top five pick, see what you can do at the quarterback spot, and then who knows? After that, every pick you do is offensive lineman, wide receiver, offensive lineman, wide receiver, or vice versa, whatever order you want to go in. Because their offensive line, I don't think is that good. They don't have guys that can separate consistently. Because most of the time they have to draw up separation. They can't create it on their own. So, I mean, for Patriots fans, it's definitely something to think about. But now I think we could go to the Dolphins side, and I think this is actually a very good win for the Dolphins because now they go into next week prepping for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's going to be a big game, 9:30 in the morning. I'm gonna go to the gym so early that day, so I'm back here at 9. I take care of everything so that way at 9:30 I am on my couch waiting for kickoff because that's going to be a game that could impact the seeding of the playoffs. Where let's say the Dolphins and the Chiefs end up with the same record, the winner of this game gets the higher seeding.
I also find it a little irresponsible, especially as a country that is coming off a devastated pandemic influenced disease where we were very cognizant of staying home whenever we had symptoms. That Patrick Mahomes, who is sick going into this week, is supposed to fly to Germany now. I think he should keep this week off, stay in Kansas City. They have a bye. It'll be like 2 weeks off for him. But yeah, like your to your point about the Dolphins versus the Patriots, I was impressed because this is just another opportunity that they had to show that they can win games in different ways. This is the second week in a row at home where they weren't able to score a touchdown first. They were down 7-0 after the turnover and all that, but they were able to win this game in a game where the offense wasn't necessarily explosive. I know that they got the long touchdown to Tyreek to get the first points on the board, and then the touchdown that sealed it to Waddle, where it was miscommunication in the secondary, and he was able just to basically walk in to the end zone. But especially with Jalen Ramsey coming back, and now with this big game going into Germany and playing the Chiefs, I think the Dolphins are really set up nicely in the playoff picture because they're now sitting at 6-2, like you said. They have the Chiefs coming up this week, and you know even with the injuries that they had to the offensive line and missing another offensive lineman who went down due to injury this week, they were still able to control the Patriots pass rush. And I saw a stat that said that during their week 2 matchup, the Patriots only blitzed, I believe, 35% of here it is. So during the week 2 matchup, the Patriots blitzed 39.4% of all snaps against Tua. On Sunday, it was up to almost 50%, 47.9% of Tua's dropbacks he was blitzed on. And the Dolphins, it was still a high pressure rate, but it wasn't like Tua was really under constant pressure. He was still able to get the ball out, which is, a staple of his gameplay. And then you have both of the receivers, and this is with Tyreek Hill not being 100% going into this game and still, gutting it out and being able to battle through this one. Both him and Jalen Waddle finished the game with over 100 yards receiving. It was nice to see Jalen Ramsey back into the lineup, and now Tua's 6-0 against Bill Belichick.
Yeah, he's 6-0. I mean, not many quarterbacks can say they have 6 wins against Bill Belichick. So major props to Tua. I don't know if how long that's going to last, depending on how long Bill Belichick is the coach. and if Tua is still a Miami Dolphin to whatever point that is. But I'm definitely was impressed by the Dolphins, and it's going to be a fun matchup going into a weekend that we'll talk about later in the week for anyone that doesn't remember. But we're definitely going to be eyeballing this Chiefs Dolphins game, and I mean it could either be the start of a very good Sunday of football because there's a lot of great games scheduled from 9:30, 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, the 8 o'clock matchup, and so on.
Yeah,
So,
from start to finish. To start that game with Dolphins Chiefs, and then to end it with Bengals Bills is going to be a fun night of football.
yep. So we definitely had a very good talk about that. I think now we could kind of switch lanes here to the Jags and the Steelers. The biggest thing that I saw in this game, I do like the Jags a lot. I was very high on them coming into this year. The only thing that I have like a concern with them is just the consistency of the offense. The offense, like they can move the ball to the down the field, but it's just the red zone where they're kind of struggling. Like they don't get a lot of touchdowns, they get a lot of field goals. And it's one thing to say about the Steelers defense being good, but also I'm like the Jags offense, you have more talent now this year than ever. Travis Etienne, he's on his second year in the offense, actually playing. He's playing really well. Trevor Lawrence has another year under Doug Peterson, so now he really knows this offense. You bring in Calvin Ridley, who's supposed to really revamp this whole offense, but he barely gets the football. And then you mainly it's kind of like last year, you're relying so much on Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram to move the ball down the field.
Yeah, and even you look at this game where they're able to go into Jacksonville. I mean, they're able to go into Pittsburgh and beat the Jaguars. And like you said, it is a good the final score in this one is 20-10. And honestly, like you said, it should have been more because Jacksonville, even with the game being played in sloppy conditions, Jacksonville had a fumble on a shovel pass to Evan Ingram in the red zone, and then Trevor Lawrence threw one of the worst interceptions ever in the end zone and was stupidly returned out of the end zone by the Steelers defensive back, and then he stepped out at the 2 yard line. So even when Jacksonville made mistakes, it was just Pittsburgh couldn't really capitalize on them. So I would say that I've been very impressed with Jacksonville, especially because they've had a really weird schedule. They had the back-to-back games in London. They were able to beat the Bills in one of those. Then they come back. They have that Thursday night game against New Orleans where Trevor Lawrence is banged up. And then they have to go to Pittsburgh, a place where, you know, for as weird as Pittsburgh is and how sometimes we're just wondering how do they win these games, Jacksonville was able to pull out the victory and not even play their most impressive game because they did have those turnovers. And then on defense, they weren't really challenged because Pittsburgh's offense just takes a while to get going. And then by the time they finally got going, Kenny Pickett had already left the game. And the one touchdown that they did give up was Pickens' only catch, and Pickens had to make an incredible hurdling move just to get into the end zone. So I came away really impressed with this Jacksonville team after watching this game. And it was a game that I really had circled because it was like, all right, you guys have gotten a little bit of hype, building off of last year and that playoff victory, the improbable comeback from behind win over the Los Angeles Chargers. Come into this year, obviously, make the trade for Calvin Ridley, like you said. They finally get to see him in this offense. He gets off to the really good start week one, then is kind of been peaks and valleys. He had a good game as far as like production wise. This one didn't get into the end zone, but he was utilized. And when you look at their offense, they really do have weapons everywhere, whether it's Calvin Ridley, whether it's Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, ETN, who caught a long touchdown pass in this one and had a good game on the ground. They like this Tank Bigsby rookie that they have as his backup, as more of the bruising running back, but he fumbled in a really important spot in this one as well. And then they basically exclusively went to ETN. But I really, really like Trevor Lawrence. And I think he's
Yeah.
starting to really figure it out, especially after that rookie year where, there was questions on, oh, is this really the most hyped and perfect quarterback prospect that we've had since John Elway. He doesn't look that great. We also wanted to dunk on him because it was Urban Meyer as his head coach there. But last year, they were a little inconsistent, still trying to figure things out. But he made Christian Kirk, because we had discussed about the contract and how, we'd like Christian Kirk as a player, but to be paid that much. And then, he basically balled out all of last year as their wide receiver one with Trevor Lawrence. And now this year you add Calvin Ridley. And even though it hasn't been a great season, it's just more weapons for him to utilize. So I'm really, really high on this Jacksonville team after this stretch of games. And I want to see how how the stretch goes out for them. But this is a team that I'm going to be looking to continue to bet on and to continue to watch as the season goes on, because I think their schedule is pretty favorable for the rest of the year because they still have to play the rest of their division.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they still have to play a couple of more, winnable games.
And so they have a bye coming into this one, and then they have San Francisco traveling to Jacksonville for that game. So that should be fun. And they have a bad loss against Houston, and then they lost 17-9 against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. So I mean, they do have like a very favorable schedule where I feel like they could pile up some wins. But I want to go back to on your part with Trevor Lawrence. Man, I was so high on him coming on to the draft because I was like, if you look at Trevor Lawrence's size, he great size for a quarterback. He's tall, he's big, he's fast. And then we saw in college he has shown the arm. He's shown he can run with very good speed and has good ability to run with the ball. And the only thing would just be all right, his decision making in the NFL, because a player could be great in college and be a terrible decision maker. But if you're a good player and you're a terrible decision maker in the NFL, you're a bust. So I am very happy to see Trevor progress. I do feel like if this Jags team could like get the offense more consistently, I feel like they will be a much bigger threat in the AFC to Cincinnati, Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City. I feel like they would be a much bigger threat in terms of contending. But right now, I would say they're out of like the top five teams, I would put them at 5 in the AFC. I can't put them up there with the top 4 just yet.
I don't know. I think it would be, for me, it'd be kind of a tie between them and Baltimore. I think they match up pretty evenly. It just depends on what offense shows up for Baltimore. If it's those offenses we saw the first 2 games, or the ones that we've seen more recently where they started to hit their stride. But I really do like this Jacksonville team, and I want to see them keep progressing. And maybe they make a move today at the trade deadline. We'll see. But I think that they have a solid young core to build around for the next few years, especially with Trevor Lawrence.
Definitely. Now I think we can probably switch lanes to when you talked about quarterbacks, a quarterback that was written off years before, had a great year last year, and he's been okay this year. I'm not gonna say he's been great, but he's been very solid. Solid. That's Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks beating the Cleveland Browns in a thriller. And a lot of people even kind of questioned the last play. Was it holding? Call me devil's advocate because I feel you could call holding on almost every play in the NFL from start of the game to finish. So that's just me. But I do have to give the Seahawks credit. It was a big win against a team that was essentially rolling because Cleveland was making great strides. And for since Seattle to get this win, I feel like it was huge. I feel like this is a big win for Seattle.
And considering that they almost choked it away after they got off to a really impressive start to this game, they got Tyler Lockett that early touchdown. DK had a 40-yard pass to start the game, and then the Browns just kind of slowly but surely fought their way back into this one. And how did you feel about the Seahawks jerseys in this one? Because everybody was making a big deal about the throwbacks. They weren't my favorite, and I didn't think they looked that great on the screen just watching this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite jersey. I understand why they
They
wear it,
they
but
certainly were no Houston Oiler jerseys that
yeah.
the Texans or the Titans were wearing today.
Oh yeah, 100%. It wasn't that, but I'm also like, all right, this is their throwback uniforms. This isn't the first time we've seen them wear it. so I can't be too really upset about it. Plus, I mean, they've had such a good stretch with uniforms and jerseys for so long. They're bound to like still have a bad one, and that's the one they decided to wear. So I can't be too mad about it. I mean, who knows? Maybe that's what helped them win the game. The Browns were just looking at their jerseys, just like that is awful. Like I need to run away from them.
And I just don't understand what happened in this game because it was a really, really strange game. So the final score ended up being 24-20 with the rookie Jackson Smith and Jigba catching the winning touchdown essentially for the Seattle Seahawks, coming off of, for some reason, the Browns decided to throw the ball on third down, and Kevin Stefanski, who continues to make just some bonehead decisions, decided to trust PJ Walker in that spot, and the pass gets deflected and intercepted and sets up that game-winning drive for the Seahawks. But the Seahawks, who ended up winning with a final score of 24, scored 17 unanswered points to start this game.
Mm-hmm.
17 unanswered points to start this game. They had 17 in the first quarter, too, and then didn't score again until that last touchdown to win the game. And I was curious to see how Cleveland played in this one because Seattle's offensive line, who was improved last year because of the play of their two rookie offensive tackles, and now I think both of them missed this one due to injury. I thought it was going to be a real problem considering what we've seen of this Cleveland defense and how we had mentioned how Myles Garrett has been on kind of a different level than anybody else this year. The Seahawks offensive line only gave up one sack and three quarterback hits on 38 dropbacks with Myles Garrett out there for most of the game. And I thought it was a really, really impressive game for Seattle, especially considering, like I said, they had Jason Peters at right tackle for them, who, if you guys aren't familiar, is 41 years old.
Yeah, I mean, when we said Tom Brady was battling father time, no, Jason Peters has been battling father time.
And that offensive line, and with the potential of the Browns saying, okay, every time the 41-year-old right tackle steps onto the field, Myles Garrett, you line up directly across from him. You line up directly across from him. But, you have to give credit to Seattle, even though it was like a tale of two halves for this team. But and as far as this game goes, but with this victory and the 49ers losing to the Bengals, which we'll talk about later, this victory puts Seattle into first place in the NFC West, which I think if you would have asked any of us 3 weeks ago when San Francisco was coming off of that victory to the Cowboys, none of us would have seen that because we all thought at that point San Francisco is the best team that we have in the NFL or pretty close to it. And now with the injuries that San Francisco has been dealing with, Seattle's been hanging tough. I mean, if Geno doesn't throw 3 interceptions against the Bengals, they probably win that game in Cincinnati. It was a game that we had talked about. He threw another 2 interceptions in this game. So that's something that I want to keep my eye on. Can they limit his turnovers, especially when you consider they ran for 6.7 yards per carry,
Yeah.
8.3 yards per carry for Kenneth Walker, and 10.6 yards per carry for the rookie Zach. How do you say his name? Is it Charbonnet?
Yeah,
It's Charbonnet,
Charbonnet.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Zach Charbonnet. So I think that we might get back to. I think it just depends on the offensive line because I think Pete Carroll is definitely a coach that wants to win by imposing his will and leaning on his run game. And they added Leonard Williams in a trade yesterday from the New York Giants. So that should help on their defense, a defense that's been playing really well and just got Jamal Adams back, who had a big interception in this game as well. So I have my eye on Seattle. And, like you said, there's been quarterback, we mentioned quarterback chaos all throughout week 8. Geno's been rock steady for this Seattle team since getting the starting job.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say this for everyone. This was Geno Smith's stats for the month of October because today is Halloween. So happy Halloween, everyone. Geno Smith has completed in the month of October 81 passes out of 122 attempts, which equates to 66% completion percentage for 909 yards with 5 touchdowns and 5 picks. So I mean, it's been okay. Obviously, a bunch of those turnovers came in one game. That I just do have a fear for Seattle because last year Gino played so above beyond expectations that maybe our expectations have kind of flawed what our viewpoint is. And I feel like we might have to like say, all right, do have to remember it. Geno Smith was not a starter in the NFL for a long time for a reason. But with the way how they had built the talent around him, I mean, we could expect them to see a playoff spot again. Do I feel like they'll be competitive in the playoffs? That would be the question to me because I do want to see how Leonard Williams is implemented into this defense and does he produce? And then Jamal Adams, after not playing football for so long, can you actually get back to an all pro level or at least a pro bowler level? And if you can do that, obviously I do think they can probably put up a fight in a couple of games. I just feel like their play is so inconsistent, just like how we said from the game. The first quarter they were great, but then after that, ever since until that very last drive, they were not good. Like they didn't do a good job. It was sloppy play after sloppy play, and it did help them that PJ Walker in total did not play his best football. PJ Walker had one touchdown, two picks in this game, and his QBR on a scale of 0 to 100 for the entirety of this game was a 28.
But the thing is, this is the thing, because you go with PJ Walker into Seattle with the 12th man, right?
Mm-hmm.
With 5:46 remaining in the fourth quarter, the Browns leading 20-17.
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland gets possession. They're able to slowly but methodically move the ball downfield. The clock gets down to the 2-minute warning, and they're right at midfield. It's third down. They
Yeah,
only
no,
need 3 yards left.
that play call was awful.
They only have 3 yards left. If they can just run the ball, or if they can get the 3 yards, Seattle has to use their final timeout. And they threw an interception. I just don't get why they didn't put the ball on the ground. I don't get it.
Yeah. And then if that happens, Seattle has this loss, and then Geno's final stat line is actually worse than what it looked like. With it would actually be two picks, one touchdown, and I forgot how many yards he passed on that final drive, but he it wouldn't be that good for Geno. So it was definitely kind of a weird weekend, like you said at the beginning. I think based on how you said it, I mean, and I thought it was spot on. It was kind of like, all right, can our quarterback live past this day? Can we see him next week like perfectly healthy? Because from basically at this point right now, the best ability a quarterback can have is availability. Are you available to start for your team next Sunday and the Sunday after that?
And I mean, honestly, for me, I think the Browns are going to be my adopted second team for this year because I just can't quit them. I mean, I have like zero read on them. I've seen too many of their games, and it's like, so we watched that Monday night game against the Steelers where they lose Chubb, and their offense just implodes, and they basically lose just to the Pittsburgh defense. Then they have the game against the 49ers, which I still to this day don't understand how they pulled that one out. Then they have the game against the Colts where I'm like, okay, they have at the time a historic defense, and they're going to go play Gardner Minshew.
Yep.
And then that game becomes one of the more wackier games that we've had all season. And then this one, I'm like, okay, they'll finally regress towards the mean. PJ Walker is going to get figured out or rattled a little bit in Seattle. And then, all right, I'm looking good after the first quarter, 17-0, they're down. And then they have the lead 20-17, and then still lose the game with 44 seconds left. I'm just fascinated to see how this works out because between Stefanski and his just questionable play calling at some of these in-game situations, and with the whole Deshaun situation, I mean, I mean, you can say the best availability for the best trade for him right now is just to be available for his team, but for him, I mean, the contract's guaranteed. I don't care if I got to play again, man. And who is he supposed to play? Who's he playing for? To throw the ball to old Amari Cooper now? To
Yep.
throw the ball to Elijah Moore? Like,
Yep.
I mean, he's probably like, you see PJ. PJ's got it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't. I wouldn't blame him if he were to approach Cleveland like that. Walks into the office and say, "Hey,
Contract guaranteed, right? I just want to make sure we agreed on that, right? Yeah, yeah,
yeah."
okay, all right. So
I mean,
I'll
if he
tell
were
you
to
what,
say
I'll
that,
tell you when my shoulder feels better.
yeah, if he were to say that, I'd be like, "Hmm." I mean, he does have a point. You are the team that gave it to him, so it's definitely
It's that's why I'm fascinated to see how this shakes out. And if you look at this division, the AFC North now has three teams at 4-3.
hmm
For me personally, I got no more confidence in Pittsburgh. I know Tomlin's still going to get them four more victories, and they're gonna finish right in the playoff hunt. It's just lock that in. I don't know how it's going to happen. They're going to get four more victories, even if it's Trubisky at quarterback. Cincinnati, who started off awful, we're going to talk about that game later, but had the most impressive win this weekend.
absolutely.
And Cleveland, who at the beginning we were like, yo, they might have something. What's going on over here? Now it's like, can we get our starting quarterback back? Like, what's going on? We lost Nick Chubb. We brought back Kareem Hunt off the street. Jerome Ford has a high ankle sprain, but he's still playing. What Elijah Moore we traded for? He's like sort of kind of our wide receiver one because Amari Cooper can get open, but these guys can't throw him the ball. It's a fascinating team over there. Myles Garrett's still a beast.
Yep. And then you still have Baltimore, whose offense, their weapons are very inconsistent. Outside of Mark Andrews, we don't know how their weapons are going to do. Yes, Zay Flowers has had a great rookie year so far, but he does have a good amount of drops too. He does have a good amount of drops, so it's the inconsistency play of the Baltimore Ravens that we always worry about. And then at the end of the year, it's Baltimore's one of the higher teams with the most amount of injuries. So I don't know what to think of Baltimore. I did pick them to go to the Super Bowl, but I would have to see it then and there. But I do want to go back to when he talked about a fully guaranteed contract to a quarterback who was the first one to get a fully guaranteed contract in Kirk Cousins, who, like Myles said, he ruptured his Achilles and now he's out for the rest of the year. And before we start about it, I do want to reiterate what Myles said and to 100%. Shout out to Kirk, man. I mean, that dude has done his job always to be available for his team, whether if it's good or bad. He's always out there every Sunday, and him hopping off the field on his own power. And then once he
Was
got on the
dope.
cart,
Yeah.
he stayed on the field to watch them finish the drive. So I was
Yeah.
like, you
Yeah.
they can't
Shout
say
out to Kirk.
yeah, shout out to him. Like
And he was cool at that quarterback show. He was clearly the winner. Even with Mahomes on it, he was clearly the winner because I never thought that he would be relatable like that. And he was super relatable in that. And he's had such an interesting career from being drafted the same year that your franchise
RG3.
drafted RG3 with the second overall pick to getting the job over there to getting franchise back to back to going to Minnesota and making the playoffs multiple times. Like, shout out to Kirk. And I understand that, we've had discourse on throughout his career on if he can be the quarterback that leads you to the Super Bowl, whatever it may be. He was one of those players where you either loved them or you hated them. And I think that's a perfect spot to be in because at least you're talking about him. So
Yeah.
shout out to Kirk. And
His
like I said,
resume is actually really good for anyone that hasn't seen Kirk Cousins' resume for his career. He actually has one of the better resumes than almost everyone. If you look at it without even seeing it, the only thing he has not accomplished is winning a Super Bowl.
yeah, he
Done
has
everything else
monster
except
stats.
obviously winning MVP.
Yeah, he has monster stats throughout his career. And, the most impressive thing for me was that they continue to be able to move the ball through the air after Justin Jefferson went out. Because once Justin Jefferson got there, it was like, all right, this is my number one option, and then I'm going to need a reason not to throw the ball over there. And, they drafted Jordan Addison in the first round. It seems like he's already got a really good connection with Kirk Cousins, and it's just a bummer. And I want to see how this plays out for them for the rest of the season and what potential moves that they could make. I mean, like I said, Jaron Hall came in to replace him. Nick Mullins is currently on injured reserve dealing with a back injury.
Did
And
they
as soon
try to
as
go
he
out
could
and
be
get Jameis?
activated is week 10. There's a couple backups that they could try to target, whether it's Jameis, whether it's Jacoby Brissett, whether it's Taylor Heineke. I'm not exactly sure where they
Or
go
maybe
from
Tannehill.
here. Tannehill could be a thing, so we'll see how they shake out. But as far as this game goes, the thing that I really need to talk about is the Packers are bad. The Packers are a bad football team.
Defensively, they have a nice squad. Defensively, I do like their defense. It's just offensively, I just think they're so inconsistent and they don't know how to draw up plays that gets people wide open. I think Aaron Jones is a good player. He hasn't had a very good season. AJ Dillon, I think he's not a bad running back. I actually think he's a very solid running back you can have. Then you have Christian Watson, who came onto the scene last year by having that big stretch of a lot of games with a touchdown and a lot of like good games. And then you have Romeo Dobbs, who is actually shown to be a very good receiver. Romeo Dobbs can be a good receiver for a lot of teams. I actually think he could be a two on a bunch of teams. Do I feel like he could be a one? I'm not there yet. I just have to see more out of him. But it's just the quarterback playing the offensive line. They're just not great. I mean, I thought Jordan Love would be a lot better this year because I was like,
He's
okay,
bad. He's bad. He's
you
bad.
figured
He's bad.
after
He's bad.
spending how many years under Aaron Rodgers, you had to have learned a lot of things from Aaron.
He's
And
bad.
obviously you could see there's stuff that he's learned, but there's also stuff that's like, all right, come on. Like you shouldn't have to be coming back in every game because you start terrible in the first half of almost every game.
That's exactly the point. They start off every game so bad. And it's just I don't understand. They had the game against the Saints this year where they didn't score a first half point, and then they come back and are able to win that game. And their two wins this year against the Chicago Bears and the New Orleans Saints, like two teams that aren't necessarily good. And every other game that they lost to the Falcons, they lost to the Lions, they lost to the Raiders, they lost to the Broncos, and now they lose at home to the Vikings. I don't understand what's going on over there. Like you said, Christian Watson, as soon as he got activated last year from his injury, basically was on fire, was catching touchdowns every single game. And now you move on from the quarterback, and this is the guy that LaFleur wanted. Like this was his guy. They made the move. This is what caused Aaron Rodgers to leave the franchise. And I don't see anything creative with this offense. I like you said, Aaron Jones, who had a great first game against Chicago, hasn't done anything since then. I understand he got hurt. He had the hamstring injury, but it wasn't like they were doing anything with AJ Dillon back there against and then just passing the ball. Jordan Love is just not good. I just don't think there's anything impressive about him at all. And this is now
The
we're
only
8 weeks through
connection
the
he
NFL
has
season.
is with Romeo Dobbs. He has the connection with Romeo Dobbs like down packed and you trust him. But everyone else, he just doesn't want to throw him the football. Yeah, he'll throw the ball to Reed a couple of times and maybe Musgrove, maybe he'll pass him the ball. But it's also coming to a point, it's like, bro, like how many times do you have to play from behind in order to actually, push the ball down the field?
I just I'm completely out on this Packers team, and it's kind of crazy because I thought that they were going to be good this year. Like I
Yeah.
really still I like their defense a lot. They got a lot of names on their
Yeah,
defense.
you figured like
Defense
a 7-win team, like 7 wins. If they could get 7 wins, that would be like amazing.
And you look at it, the defense gave up week one, they gave up 20 points to Chicago. Week two, they gave up 25 points to Atlanta. Week three, 17 points against New Orleans. Okay. Week four, they gave up 34 points to the Lions. Okay. 17 points to the Raiders, 19 points to the Broncos, 24 points against the Vikings. Like these are not insurmountable leads that they're giving up. So it's like, oh, the offense has to work from behind, has to do this. No, it's just the offense is not helping out the defense in any way by putting points on the board.
Yep. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster, and they're definitely living through it right now. So let's move on to our next game because we got two more games to cover, and this one is the Chiefs and the Broncos. And man, it was a tough one for Patrick Mahomes. As everyone who's listened to the show, I'm a big Patrick Mahomes guy. And yeah, he went into the game obviously sick, but also, I mean, he didn't play good. He did
Yeah.
not play good. And the Chiefs, I mean, it definitely shows the offensive like struggles that they had throughout the whole year is that there's very inconsistent pass catching play that's not Travis Kelsey. It's going to come back to haunt them. It will. And I like Rashid Rice, Sky Moore. I had high hopes for him coming into this year to really, make that second year jump. Hasn't done anything. I thought Watson could at least help Ross. I thought Ross was going to have a big year considering all the reports coming out of camp. And then the running game, I thought this year it was going to be full Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon. I did not think Clyde Edwards-Helaire was going to be a part of the offense, and I feel like they're still trying to figure that out with like that offense, where it's like Pacheco can get you those hard yards on the ground. Jerick McKinnon is great in the passing game, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it could be a mixture of both. Like you could put him in both situations, and I don't feel like you would lose a step. But man, that offense for the Chiefs, they need to figure out something because clearly they're not playing good football right now.
Was this the worst game we've seen the Chiefs play of the Mahomes era?
As probably a collective offensive unit, I think it's hard to beat the one in the Super Bowl, but Patrick was actually very good in that Super Bowl against the Buccaneers. It's just everyone else just kept dropping passes. This one, Mahomes was just bad on top of it. So
Yeah, and I want to know how much he was impacted by, like you said, the illness that he had. And again, this is now the second week where we've had players just mysteriously get ill the day of games, where there was Bijan last week, and then this week we had Patrick Mahomes with the reports that he wasn't feeling well. And it's weird how that can happen sometimes. And I hope he's healthy, because I don't want to hear any excuses when the Dolphins beat them in Germany this week. But like I said, the Chiefs committed 5 turnovers in this game, went 0 of 3 in the red zone, and were 3 of 10 on third down.
they weren't
That's
good.
that's almost as big as a riddle as how my man Tommy DeVito finished the game with -1 passing yards on 2 completions. And it's not even like the defense played bad. They had 5 sacks in this game. It was just a combination, and they had the blocked field goal attempt as well that gave them good territory. But it was just a weird football game. And I mean, at some point, this is going to become a storyline with Travis Kelsey not performing well when Taylor Swift's not there.
Oh
And
gosh.
I'm already hating the discussion that's going to follow, but it's going to become a
Yeah.
storyline.
So a lot
So,
of
for
people are
the
going to
sake
talk
of all
about
Dolphins fans, let's hope that she doesn't show up in Germany.
it. Every Dolphins fan that's including Myles is saying, please do not show up to the game. I don't care how you could
But the
show up
thing
every
is,
other
she
week.
might show up because she just started her European leg of her tour. That's why
Oh,
she wasn't
I
at the
didn't know
Broncos
that.
game. Yeah, that's the whole thing. She's on the European tour right now. And so this is the thing. People have scheduled it out. She has a show in Tokyo the day of the Super Bowl.
Okay.
So what happens then if they go to the Super Bowl? I think that show gets canceled. No, I'm sorry to all my Taylor Swift, all my Swifties over in Tokyo, but the Super Bowl, I don't know, bro. But and it sets up a fascinating matchup with the Dolphins next week, because, like you said, the pass catching, I want to say lack of options is really starting to bite them, because I understand that Patrick Mahomes is one of these quarterbacks that can elevate everybody around him. And he has his safety blanket in Travis Kelsey, where, they have a connection that's not common between quarterbacks, where they really think the same on majority of their plays. But outside of that, you need somebody that's still going to make a big play. Before, even when they had Tyreek and Travis Kelsey, it was the random big play that they would get from a Cole Hardman. It was the random big play they would get from a Sammy Watkins. And then last year was the random big play they'd get from an MVS. It was these just plays that would be, the final straw that broke the camel's back. Now they don't have that. Even when they were trying to make the comeback late, Mahomes scrambles out, extends the play, has Sky Moore in the end zone. It would have been a tough catch. I understand that, but it's still a play that should have been made if you want to win this game. And today is the trade deadline, like you mentioned. We're recording on Halloween, like you said. Happy Halloween to everybody. So I really want to know if they can make a trade for a receiver.
Man, I feel like probably the best receiver they can get. I mean, if they really
I
trying
mean,
to
I
go
don't
for
even
it,
know who it's going to be.
I would say your best option is probably Adam Thielen. Maybe you can probably get him in a trade, but that's like be very, very like outgoing out there to get a receiver. If not, I mean, could they call the New York Giants and maybe get a Darius Slayton? I feel like Slayton would at least be a little bit of an upgrade compared to a couple of players that they have
Renfro, maybe just a
under
possession
Renfro.
guy. I mean,
Yeah,
Devontae Parker. I mean, not Devontae Parker. Devontae Adams was
that
so
would be the
pissed off
holy
yesterday.
grail.
Yeah, but I mean, the
No way they
NFL
trade
has,
an
yeah,
individual.
the NFL has to Chris Paul that trade if that happens. You can't have Devontae Adams and Patrick Mahomes on the same team, bro. Come on,
If that
that would
happens,
be insane.
everyone's just going to be like, well, okay, guys, season's over.
That would be insane. Who are some of these other bad teams that we have out there?
I
But the
mean,
thing is like you have bad teams, and it's like, do we? The what you mentioned him earlier, I thought Kendrick Bourne would have been an all right option. You know,
yeah,
he has some speed, can be used as a possession guy. I thought they could have maybe tried him out, but it's just been really disappointing the lack of weapons he's had around him. And maybe we were just spoiled at the beginning of his career because they did find an absolute gem in Tyreek Hill late in the draft.
yeah,
You know, and he was already with Kelsey, and they could kind of figure out what to do around them because you know we see it down here in Miami. That
yeah,
speed is just unmatchable, and then you matched him with Mahomes' arm, and it was game over.
yeah. It was unreal, and maybe another team that's bad. I mean, do they want to call maybe the Buccaneers and see maybe if they could get a Chris Godwin? That's something, or
That
like
would be that would be nice. I would like that a
that
lot for
that
him.
that would help out a lot. I mean, do they call the? No, I don't think they'll be able to get one receiver from the Packers
I mean,
either.
because you look at these stats against the Broncos, and this is a game for what the whole entire second half they were down. So at some point it was like, all right, we kind of have to abandon the rushing game so we can move the ball downfield and score quickly. You have Travis Kelsey 9 targets. You have Rashid Rice 5 targets, 4 receptions. Isaiah Pacheco 4 targets, 3 receptions for -3 yards. Justin Watson 3 targets, 2 catches. Noah Gray 3 targets, 2 catches. MVS had 4 targets, 2 catches, 27 yards. McCole Hardman, who had a muffed punt after coming back, 2 targets, 2 catches for 13 yards. Jerick McKinnon 2 targets, 1 catch. Sky Moore 3 targets, 1 catch, and Kadarius Toney 1 target, 1 catch for 4 yards. Like
Yeah.
that's not doing anything to help you guys out.
Yeah, that trade for Kadarius Toney is not. I mean, we could say it worked out in the end because the Chiefs did get the Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl, so in reality, they can say they did win the trade. But in terms of production after last year, it's just hasn't been good. We thought Kadarius Toney could be like that gadget tool. All right, they'll use him everywhere, but it just hasn't worked out for them. Well, we don't know because we're not GMs at the end of the day. Plus, if we were, I believe probably we would make some very, very rational moves like day of after seeing it. It's like, nope, I'm trading this dude.
Who do
Like,
you think has the most receiving yards at that's listed as wide receiver on their depth chart?
that's not Travis Kelsey.
Yeah, that's listed as a receiver. Not Kelsey, not Noah Gray, not the other kid, Watson.
And it's not Watson either.
It's Rashid Rice,
Yeah.
361 yards.
Yeah. I was thinking it was probably like either between Rashid Rice or I was gonna say maybe Sky Moore. Maybe
Sky
Sky.
Moore is third at 168 yards.
Okay.
MVS is second amongst receivers at 227.
Yeah. So it's definitely they're I do believe they're going to go into the offseason and address this issue, but I also know their biggest issue is like, hey, protect Patrick Mahomes,
Yeah,
which I understand. I'm not going to blame any team for wanting to build the best offensive line, but clearly the Jawan Taylor is not good.
that is such an interesting move because I still don't think he's bad. It's just that the penalties and maybe it's just not a good fit for that offense because
Yeah,
I
it's
still don't think
just
he's a bad player. And like obviously they didn't either. That's why they gave him the contract.
yeah. I mean, they were like, all right, he did a good job protecting Trevor Lawrence last year. Maybe he could come in and fill in the spot for Orlando Brown, and it just hasn't worked out. But
Yeah.
I think now we can move from protection of Patrick Mahomes to the protection of Joe Burrow, who have Orlando Brown, who was a Chief last year, and where the Bengals marched into San Francisco and won the game. They beat the San Francisco 49ers, who lost their third game straight. Obviously, a lot of people are going to want to talk about Brock Purdy and everything, but we also have to talk about Joe Burrow because now Joe Burrow really looks healthy. He looks healthy. Now the Bengals, they actually ran the ball. So credit to the Bengals. They were able to rush the ball well. T. Higgins, he looks good now. Jamar Chase is going to be Jamar Chase. Obviously I would like to see what other weapons that they utilize going forward for the rest of the year. It's like, all right, who's their third option? Obviously they have Tyler Boyd, but in recent past, their tight end has been utilized a lot. So I do want to see where the next option goes to. But with the way the Bengals played, I mean, we can't be shocked if they make the playoffs again if they keep rolling the way.
I don't even think that's a discussion anymore. I wouldn't be shocked if they're back in the AFC Championship game again because with the way they played on Sunday, I think that was one of the most impressive victories that we've had all season. I
Yeah.
mean, they were basically flawless on all sides of the ball. On offense, Joe Burrow finished the game 28 of 32 for 286 and had 43 yards rushing on the game. So he was able to beat them through the air with his accuracy and using his legs when needed. Jamar Chase had over 100 yards again. They got T. Higgins finally involved. I know it wasn't, a big, huge game, but he had 69 yards on the day. Joe Mixon had his best game of the season. The defense they had two interceptions. One of them was, an incredible play, the one made on the sideline, but still they had two interceptions. And then there wasn't a penalty committed in the game until that last drive where they had a roughing the passer. So, I mean, this is about as flawless a game as you can play, especially considering the opponent, considering what we know about the Bengals, where it's all right. We trust them. We trust Burrow and Chase and his connection with both his receivers, Chase and Higgins. But is he going to have time to be protected? And going up against one of the best defenses we have in the NFL, he had time and he absolutely picked them apart. And I was super, super impressed with what we saw from the Bengals. And, after starting this year 1-3, they're now 4-3. And the Niners, who started the year 5-0, are now 5-3. So, two teams heading in opposite directions. And they were showing the stat after the game, which I hadn't realized, that all four of their victories are now against the NFC West.
Well,
I
I mean,
didn't
at the
realize
end
that.
of the day, those
Yeah,
are, yeah. I mean, you
they
want those
basically won the
wins.
division.
Yeah, they won the division. You
In
obviously
November.
you want to win the games against your own division, the
Yeah.
AFC North, but somehow that's their kryptonite because they struggle against Cleveland like crazy. Pittsburgh always gives them a tough game, and Baltimore is going to be playing them tough. So I see that, but I mean, guys, you might want to try to start winning games in your own division. So, but credit to them. That's actually a fun stat to know. They beat every team in the NFC West. So, congratulations, the new NFC West champions, the Cincinnati Bengals, because you swept them. You
Yeah.
swept your whole division.
Straight up swept the division. And I just can't overstate it enough how impressed I was with this Bengals victory, going on the road, playing a San Francisco team that needed a victory after losing that Monday night game, was still missing Debo. They had McCaffrey, but it really wasn't a contest, honestly. And this looked like the Joe Burrow that we've seen in the playoffs. This was Joe Cool, where everybody's like, okay, this guy is him. And for them to figure out the offense, and I want to know just how much of it required Burrow to be healthy. We saw him get the calf injury, and then we saw how weird the offense looked the first couple of weeks. Even that first game was probably the worst offensive game we've seen from the Bengals in this era. And then now they go and they play Buffalo. And for me, honestly, even if they lose the Buffalo game, I won't necessarily take it against them unless it's really
And we
bad.
can't count them out.
But because for me, they're in a great position because they already went to Buffalo last year in the playoffs, punched them in the face, and won that game. So for Buffalo, I'd be looking at this like, all right, this is our time to respond to this Cincinnati team. So I wouldn't be surprised if Buffalo wins that game, but I have my eye on Cincinnati, and I think especially because of how the season started with them starting off 1-4, 1-3,
1-3.
yeah, starting off 1-3, and now them sitting at 4-3, and with Baltimore sort of kind of taking control of the division. It's not a team I would want to play if I was a division winner in a wild card game.
Yeah. and just hear their schedule. Obviously, they play Buffalo this week. Next week they play Houston. Then they go into a tough stretch of games. They play Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville. Then they have Indianapolis, Minnesota. We don't know what's going to be the Vikings at that point. Pittsburgh, Kansas City, and then they end the year with Cleveland. So there's some very winnable games in there, but also like how we said with how considering how they play within their own division, it's kind of tough at this point. So I definitely want to see how that shakes out for them. But just to reiterate what you said, the Bengals were really impressed me on Sunday. So I can't even like say anything bad about them. I have high hopes for them going into Buffalo. I'm going to pick them to win this game. Spoiler alert for anyone who's going to be hearing our show, our next one, when we talk about the previews of the matchups. But yeah, overall, great win for Cincinnati. I can't even like I really couldn't pick anything. Their special teams was good. Their defense was amazing. Their offense was clicking on all cylinders. They played almost a flawless game.
Yeah, and remember last season they went on that 7 game winning streak. And they this game, they, like I said, they didn't have a penalty until late into that game. At one point, Joe Burrow was 17 straight completions in a row to end the half. They This was an interesting stat too. They had Joe Burrow under center 18 times in this game, and that's triple what they've had him in the previous 6 games combined. So he was only under center, I think, 6 times in the last games. And so I think he's starting to get more healthy. And for me, this is a guy that I've had questions about, and just because I think there's a lot of talent, so it's not the hardest to put together a great offensive game plan. But Zach Taylor, I think, put together a flawless game plan going into this one.
Yep, 100% agree. Well, guys, that's kind of it for us. We are going to end it here. We're going to be giving a more detailed show on Friday or Thursday, depending on what day it comes out. But because we have a big weekend of football, we
A
got a
fun
lot
week
of
to look
great
forward to.
matchups.
Yeah.
Starting today, like we said, with Kansas City and Miami to end it with Buffalo and Cincinnati. We have other great matchups too, because we also have Philly and Dallas. So we got a lot of games to talk about. We'll be very excited for that show, and we're even going to give you guys an update on fantasy because our league we're still alive, and me and Myles both won this week, so it's definitely getting close because now there's only a 2 game separation between third place and last place. 2 game separation, so everyone in the league is still alive somehow. But that'll be it for us today, guys. We will see you next time.
Peace.